Hare Krishna. Okay. Am I audible? Hare Krishna. Am I audible now?
Yes, Prabhu.
All right. Okay. Just wanted to know. Okay, so we are in part 2, chapter 2. No, actually part 3, chapter 2. Part 3, chapter 2. What's this? Somebody wants a link for the class. Okay, anyway, I can't figure it out. I have to get that to here. Okay, chapter 2. Srila Prabhupada's remarks on verses quoted in Śrī Hari-nāma. Stanza 4. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.8. Dharmas manishtitah pumsam vishvaksena kathasuya notpadayet yadiratim shrama evati kevalam. Which literally means if the occupation of humankind executed in terms of one's own position does not produce attraction to the message of the personality of Godhead, it is certainly and entirely useless labor only. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had quoted this verse specifically to point out that ultimately everything has to be calculated in terms of how much attraction one has achieved for Shravanam Kirtanam. Here is Prabhupada's purport. There are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body, around one's own body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. So you have concentrated gross selfishness, and then you have extended gross selfishness. In the conception of extended gross selfishness, you want to do good to others, but your conception of what is good to others is gross bodily happiness. If you can give that to others, you think you have done some good work. About these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental sphere, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and the mind. And then higher than this, you have the intellectuals. Now, in between, elsewhere Prabhupada writes, in between these two, there is also subtle material happiness in terms of art, fine arts, and so on. But then higher than that are these mental speculation, mental speculators' attempts to make sense of their position in this world, and therefore they come up with some philosophy, some ideology. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. So then you have the spiritual need, which is to satisfy the soul. Because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of the self is raised here. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with emolument of the body and mind. Emolument, a payment that is made especially in money or any other form for your services. The body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be fulfilled. Simply by cleansing the cage of the bird, one does not satisfy the bird. One must actually know the needs of the bird himself. The need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. He wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of Godhead. There's a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagement that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord, and any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein to be simply a waste of time. So this is the key point. Anything which does not lead one to the point of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, even if it is authorized in the Vedic scriptures, it is from the spiritual perspective and from the ultimate perspective, from the perspective of eternity, it is simply a waste of time, because whatever material benefit you get is just going to go away. It is ephemeral. It has no practical value. This is because other occupation duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the salvationists are considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties. When they don't take up devotion service unto the Supreme Lord, then there is no point even in attempting to attain salvation, liberation, because the spirit soul needs to serve Krishna. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space, either in this world or in the other. Even if he goes up to the Swarga Loka, he will find no permanent abode for his hankering soul. The hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of perfect devotional service. Then stanza 5, Thakur Bhaktivinoda had quoted this verse, Naishkarmyam apyachyuta bhava varjitam. Naishkarmyam apyachyuta bhava vivarjitam. Na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam. Kutah punah shashvata bhadram ishware. Na charpitam karma yadapya karanam. Which literally means transcendental knowledge or self-realization, in spite of being freed from the reactions of fruitive work and freed from designations, does not look well if it is devoid of the conception of the infallible Lord. then where is fruitive work that is always uncongenial and not offered unto the Lord, that it is not fruitive? Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature? Transient, temporary. The material happiness that comes out of fruitive activities that are permitted in the Vedic scriptures is transient by nature. If those fruitive activities are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord. In other words, the Vedic fruitive activities, which are commonly referred to as material dharma, need to be mixed with devotional service unto the Supreme Lord. Karma needs to be mixed with bhakti. Then that karma will have some value. Otherwise, it is not of any value. As referred to above, not only ordinary literatures devoid of the transcendental glorification of the Lord are condemned, but also Vedic literatures and speculation on the subject of impersonal Brahman, when they are devoid of devotional service. When speculation on the impersonal Brahman is condemned on the above ground, then what to speak of ordinary fruitive work which is not meant to fulfill the aim of devotional service? Such speculative knowledge and fruitive work cannot lead one to the goal of perfection. Fruitive work, in which almost all people in general are engaged, is always painful either in the beginning or at the end. It can be fruitful only when made subservient to the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also, it is confirmed that the result of such fruitive work may be offered for the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it leads to material bondage. The bona fide enjoyer of the fruitive work is the personality of Godhead. And thus, when the results of such work are engaged for the sense gratification of the living beings, those results become acute sources of trouble for such false enjoyers. The very same activity which gave us material happiness will be seen to be giving us material unhappiness. Okay, then a reference in stanza 6. Atmāramāśya munayo nirgranthāpyurukrame kurvantyahaitukīm bhaktim itham bhutaguno harihi. Sutta Goswami said, those who take pleasure in the Atma, generally meaning spirit self, and sages, in spite of being freed from all bondage, render unalloyed devotion service unto the great adventurer. Such are the wonderful qualities of the Lord. Sutta Goswami said, all different varieties of Atmāramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma or spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotion service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. The famous verse. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained this Atmārama shloka very vividly before his chief devotee, Srila Sanatana Goswami. He points out 11 factors in the shloka, namely Atmārama, Munayaha, Atmāramaha, Munayaha, Nirgranthaha, Api Cha, Purukrame, Kurvanti, Ahaitukīm, Bhaktim, Itham Bhuta Gunaha, and Harihi. According to the Vishwaprakasha Sanskrit dictionary, there are 7 synonyms for the word Atma. Now, the word Atmārama is derived from the word Atma. Atmārama is a combination of Atma plus Aramaha. Atmāramaha comes from Atma plus Aramaha. Atma can have many meanings. Arama means one who takes pleasure. Atmārama means one who takes pleasure in the Atma. But that Atma can have 7 different meanings for the word Atma, which are as follows. Brahman, the absolute truth. body, mind, endeavor, endurance, intelligence, and personal habits. So Atma Rama can then mean those who take pleasure in Brahman, the absolute truth, those who take pleasure in the body, those who take pleasure in the mind, those who take pleasure in endeavoring, those who take pleasure in enduring, those who take pleasure in their intelligence, those who take pleasure in their personal habits. The word Munayaha, so it can mean any one out of those seven. It can refer to, in fact, all the different seven separately. The word Munayaha, Munayaha is derived from the word Muni, and Munayaha is in the plural form. Technically speaking, this is masculine nominative plural. The word Munayaha refers to those who are thoughtful, those who are grave and silent, ascetics, the persistent, mendicants, sages, and saints. The word Nirgranthaha conveys these ideas. One who is liberated from nescience, ignorance, one who has no connection with scriptural injunction, that is, who is freed from the obligation of the rules and regulations mentioned in the revealed scriptures like ethics, Vedas, philosophy, psychology, and metaphysics. In other words, the fools, illiterate, urchins, etc., who have no connection with regulative principles. So, one who is absolutely transcendental is referred to as a Nirgrantha, and one who is unfit to follow Vedic Dharma. That person is also referred to as a Nirgrantha. Nirgrantha can also mean a capitalist, a person who accumulates lots of money and wants to go on accumulating money, and also one who is penniless. It can also refer to one who has no money at all. According to the Shabdakosha dictionary, the word ni, you see the word Nirgrantha has the prefix nihi, actually, which is used in the sense of certainty, counting, building, and forbiddance. And the word grantha is used in the sense of wealth, pieces, vocabulary, etc. So Nirgrantha means one who certainly has wealth, one who has a lot of wealth, one who is building his wealth, and a person who does not have any wealth. So instead of wealth, it can also be referring to a book of knowledge. One who certainly possesses knowledge. One who has no knowledge. One who is increasing his knowledge, and so on. Vocabulary. One who has more vocabulary, one who is increasing his vocabulary, one who does not have sufficient vocabulary, and so on. So in that way, it has multiple meanings. The word urukrama, urukrame is derived from the word urukrama. Urukrama means one whose activities are glorious. Krama means step. The word urukrama specifically indicates the Lord's incarnation as Vamana, who covered the whole universe by immeasurable steps. Lord Vishnu is powerful, and his activities are so glorious that he has created the spiritual world by his internal potency and the material world by his external potency. By his all-pervading features, he is everywhere present as the supreme truth, and in his personal feature, he is always presented as transcendental abode of Goloka Vrindavan, where he displays his transcendental pastimes in all variegatedness. His activities cannot be compared to anyone else, and therefore the word Urukrama is just applicable to him only. In other words, Urukrama refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Of course, obviously, it also can refer to his various plenary portions. According to Sanskrit verbal arrangement, kurvanti refers to doing things for someone else. This is technically called Parasmai Padam. I'll give a simple example. I'm not going to teach you Sanskrit grammar here, but I'll have to slightly indicate. This is a standard textbook example that I'm going to show you. There are two types of active voice in Sanskrit. We normally know that there is active voice, passive voice. But there are two types of active voice in Sanskrit. One is called Parasmaipada. Jiva Goswami refers to this as Parapada in Hari-nāma system of grammar. Another type is called Atmanepada or Atmapada. Parasmaipada type is used as an example, Pachati. Atmanepada as an example, Pachate. Both of them are derived from the verbal root Pach, which means, so Pachati means he cooks. Pachate also means he cooks. Then what is the difference? Pachati means he cooks for someone else. It could be, I'm saying he, but it could be she also. Technically, it could be it also. Cooks for someone else. For someone else to eat. Pachate. He cooks for himself. So now this distinction in Kali Yuga does not seem to have been very rigorously followed, but previously that was not the case. So Kurvanti has the sense of he's doing it for somebody else's benefit. So the text says, Kurvantya hetukim bhaktim. They engage, they do bhakti. They do bhakti for Urukrama. Urukrama is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We already saw that. And Kurvanti indicates that they are engaging in bhakti for the pleasure of Urukrama. Therefore, it means that the Atmaramas render devotional service unto the Lord, not for personal interest, but for the pleasure of the Lord, Urukrama. Then we come to this word, Ahayitukim, which ultimately has the meaning of unalloyed. But Ahayitukim comes from Ahayitukim itself is derived from ultimately it's displayed in such a strange manner. Wrong. Just put Arial and see what happens. can accept Arial. Ahetuki itself is coming from Ahetuki, which is coming from Hetu. Hetu has the meaning of cause, reason, motivation. So then Haituki has the sense of motivated, Ahaituki, unmotivated, but this is the dictionary form. When you use it in a sentence, you need to modify it and bring it to a usable form. So then Ahaituki means that. Hetu means causal, cause, reason. Motivation also is related to reason or a cause. You engage in a certain activity for a certain, because you are motivated in a particular manner, means that there is a cause for your activity. There are many causes for one's sense satisfaction, and they can be chiefly classified as material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation, which are generally desired by progressive persons. So here material enjoyment refers to ordinary material enjoyment, and mystic powers refer to extraordinary material enjoyment. Beyond material enjoyment of both types is liberation from material existence. And these are generally desired by progressive persons. So then those who desire ordinary material enjoyment are third class. Those who desire extraordinary material enjoyment in the form of the mystic powers, they are second class. Those who desire liberation are first class amongst people who are motivated. As far as material enjoyments are concerned, they are innumerable, and the materialists are eager to increase them more and more because they are under the illusory energy. There is no end to the list of material enjoyments, nor can anyone in the material universe have all of them. As far as the mystic powers are concerned, there are 8 in number. We are talking about the primary mystic powers, such as to become the minutest in form, to become weightless, to have anything one desires, to lord it over the material nature, to control other living beings, to throw earthly globes in outer space, etc. So all of that is, you can simply say, facility for extraordinary material happiness. These mystic powers are mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Canto 11. The forms of liberation are 5 in number. Sayujya, Sashti, Samithya, Salokya, Sarupya, 5 types. Therefore, unalloyed devotion, Ahaituki or Ahaitukim Bhaktim means bhakti which is not caused by the desire to attain any of this. Uncaused, unmotivated, and therefore unalloyed. Therefore, unalloyed devotion means service to the Lord without desire for the above-mentioned personal benefits. And the powerful personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, can be fully satisfied by such unalloyed devotees, free from all sorts of desires for personal profit. Unalloyed devotion service of the Lord progresses in different stages. Practice of devotion service in the material field is of 81 different qualities. And above such activities is the transcendental practice of devotional service, which is one and is called sadhana bhakti. Okay, practice of devotional service in the material field. So, there it is. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Lord Kapila's teaching. Okay. I'm just going to show you the translation. Devahuti Devi is asking this. Now I request you to explain the path of devotion service. And then Lord Kapila, he says, there are multifarious parts of devotion service in terms of the different qualities of the executor. And then he says, devotion service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry, and who is a separatist, is considered to be in the mode of darkness. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrities, defects of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. The manifestation of unadulterated devotion service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. A pure devotee does not accept any sarupya or ekatva. Ekatva is the same as sayujya, even though they are offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By attaining the highest platform of devotional service, as I have explained, one can overcome the influence of the three modes of material nature and be situated in the transcendental stage as is the Lord. So here we notice that there is bhakti in tamoguna, bhakti in rajoguna, bhakti in satoguna, and then we come across also bhakti which is fully transcendental to the three modes of material nature, fully pure. So we get, this is a devotional service in the material platform. And then this is devotional service in the spiritual platform. So in the material platform, we have, broadly speaking, three categories. But then there are 9 varieties of devotional service. So 9 times 3 would be 27 varieties of devotional service. And these modes of material nature, they don't exist just by themselves. Usually, the mode of ignorance has some admixture of the mode of passion or the mode of goodness. Similarly, the mode of passion will have some admixture of mode of ignorance or mode of goodness, and so on. So even the modes of material nature, even though we say it is of 3 types, 3 times 3 being 9, we can say there are 9, can say overall there are 9 varieties, because you can have sattva sattva, sattva rajas, sattva tamas. Then you can have rajas sattva, rajas rajas, rajas tamas. Then you can have tamas sattva, tamas rajas, tamas tamas. So in that way, it would be, you would have 9 different varieties. And I already pointed out there are 9 types of devotion. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevam. So 9 times 3 times 3 or 9 times 9 is 81. So that's how we get 81 types of devotional service on the material plane. Practice of devotional service in the material field is of 81 different qualities. And above such activities is a transcendental practice of devotional service, which is one, and it's called sadhana bhakti. So sadhana bhakti itself has to be pure sadhana bhakti. At least Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is talking about pure sadhana bhakti. Anything which is impure, he brings it under the category of either tamasic devotion service or rajasic devotion service or sattvic devotion service with their admixtures, further admixtures. When unalloyed practice of sadhana bhakti is matured into transcendental love for the Lord, the transcendental loving service of the Lord begins gradually developing into 9 progressive stages of loving service under the headings of attachment, love, affection, feelings, affinity, adherence, following, ecstasy, and intense feelings of separation. So here, attachment refers to bhava bhakti, love refers to prema bhakti, and then there are stages which are beyond prema bhakti, which cannot be experienced by the sadhaka in his or her current body. For that, he needs to make further progress. The attachment of an inactive devotee develops up to the stage of transcendental love of God. Inactive devotee, Shanta, a devotee in Shantaras. Attachment of an active servitor, Dasya Bhakta, develops up to the stage of adherence. That of a friendly devotee develops up to the stage of following, Sakhya. And the same is also the case for the parental devotees. Devotees in conjugal love develop ecstasy up to the stage of intense feelings of separation. These are some of the features of unalloyed devotional service of the Lord. Then Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes to Itham Bhuta Gunaha. Itham Bhuta Gunaha. According to Haribhakti Sudhodaya, the import of the word Itham Bhuta, this is the nature of Itham Bhuta Guna Harihi, or Itham Bhuta Gunaha Harihi, means Lord Hari has this as his nature. So Itham Bhuta means this nature, this is his nature. So the import of the word Itham Bhuta is complete bliss. In other words, the Lord Hari possesses complete, absolutely pure bliss. Transcendental bliss in the realization of impersonal Brahman becomes comparable to the scanty water contained in the pit made by a cow's poo. It is nothing compared with the ocean of bliss of the vision of the personality of Godhead. The personal form of Lord Sri Krishna is so attractive that it comprehends all attraction, all bliss, and all tastes, rasas. These attractions are so strong that no one wants to exchange them for material enjoyment, mystic powers, and liberation. There is no need of logical arguments in support of the statement, but out of one's own nature, one becomes attracted by the qualities of Lord Sri Krishna. We must know for certain that the qualities of the Lord have nothing to do with mundane qualities. That is the whole point. Itham Bhuta Guna Harihi indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari, he does not have any material feature, but he does have feature. He possesses features, but he does not possess any material feature. All of them are full bliss. All of them are full of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. There are innumerable qualities of the Lord, and one is attracted by one quality, while another is attracted by another. This is a very important point that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has revealed to the world. Previously, people did not understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They thought that the one Supreme Godhead is very great. But this world is very interesting. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has pointed out that one Supreme Godhead is not just very great, he is also the most interesting. Great sages such as the four bachelor devotees, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanat Kumar, were attracted by the fragrance of flowers and tulasi leaves, anointed with the pulp of sandalwood, offered at the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, Shukadeva Goswami was attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami was already situated in the liberative stage, yet he was attracted by the pastimes of the Lord. This proves that the quality of his pastimes has nothing to do with material affinity. Otherwise, how Shukadeva Goswami could have been attracted by Krishna? Similarly, the young cowherd damsels were attracted by the bodily features of the Lord, and Rukmini was attracted by hearing about the glories of the Lord. Lord Krishna attracts even the mind of the goddess of fortune. He attracts in special cases the minds of all young girls. He attracts the minds of the elderly ladies by maternal affection. He attracts the mind of the male in the humors, in the moods of servitude and friendship. Then Harihi, which comes from the word Hari, The word Hari conveys various meanings, but the chief import of the word is that He, the Lord, vanquishes everything inauspicious and takes away the mind of the devotee by awarding pure transcendental love. By remembering the Lord in acute distress, one can be free from all varieties of miseries and anxieties. Gradually, the Lord vanquishes all obstacles on the path of devotion service of a pure devotee, and the result of 9 devotional activities such as hearing and chanting becomes manifested. By His personal features and transcendental attributes, the Lord attracts all psychological activities of a pure devotee. Such is the attractive power of Lord Krishna. The attraction is so powerful that a pure devotee never hankers for any one of the 4 principles of religion, meaning does not hanker for dharma, artha, kama, moksha. These are the attractive features of the transcendental attributes of the Lord. And adding to this the words api and cha, one can increase the imports unlimitedly. According to Sanskrit grammar, there are 7 synonyms for the word api. So by interpreting each and every word of this shloka, one can see unlimited numbers of transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna that attract the mind of a pure devotee. So the idea is that Krishna attracts, he attracts all kinds of persons, including the fully liberated soul, who is fully liberated from material existence already. And Krishna attracts such a person that he causes him to engage in unmotivated, selfless devotional service to himself, causes him to engage in the highest variety of devotional service. And this happens to be the very nature of Lord Hari. Okay, stanza 7. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi, 17.76, which is a quote from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Na sadheti mam yogo, na sankhyam dharma uddhava, na swadhyayas tapastyago, yatha bhaktir mamorjita. My dear Uddhava, neither the yogic process of control nor the process of gaining philosophical knowledge about the absolute truth, an occupation in Vedic dharma, study of the Vedas, austerity, renunciation, acceptance of sannyas or charity, cause me to remain satisfied as much as develop devotion service unto me. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna said, my dear Uddhava, neither through Ashtanga Yoga, the mystic yoga system to control the senses, nor through impersonal monism or an analytical study of the absolute truth, nor through study of the Vedas, nor through austerities, charity, or acceptance of sannyas, can one satisfy me as much as by developing unalloyed devotion service unto me. What for? Karmis, Jnanis, Yogis, Tapasvis, and students of Vedic literature who do not have Krishna consciousness simply beat around the bush and do not get any final profit because they have no clear knowledge of the Supreme Personality of God. Nor do they have faith in approaching Him by discharging devotional service, although everywhere such service is repeatedly emphasized, as it is in this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavad Gita also declares, Bhaktyamam vijanati yavanyashasmi tatvataha. One can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead as He is only by devotional service. If one wants to understand the Supreme Personality factually, he must take to the path of devotion service and not waste time in profitless philosophical speculation, fruitive activity, mystic yogic practice, or severe austerity and penance. Elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord confirms, Klesho dhikatarastesham avyakta saktachetasam. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. People who are attached to the impersonal feature of the Lord are obliged to take great trouble, yet nevertheless they cannot understand the absolute truth. As explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. Unless one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original source of both Brahman and Paramatma, one is still in darkness about the absolute truth. So the idea is that If one wants to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must engage in unalloyed devotional service unto Krishna. Not alloyed devotional service, but unalloyed devotional service. None of the other activities, even though they are taught in the Vedic scriptures, can fully satisfy Krishna. Stanza 8, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 6.242. Hari-nāma, Hari-nāma, Hari-nāma iva kevalam, kalau nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyatha. The holy name of Lord Hari, the holy name of Lord Hari, the holy name of Lord Hari is certainly the only way. In this age of Kali, there is certainly there is not, certainly there is not, certainly there is not any other means. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. Because the people of this age are so fallen, they can simply chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In this way, they can rid themselves of the bodily conception of life and become eligible to engage in the Lord's devotion service. One cannot engage in the devotion service of the Lord without being purified of all contamination. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Yesham tu antagatam papam jananam punya karma te dvandamokha nirmukta bhajante mam dridhavrata. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Sometimes people are surprised to see young men and women take so seriously to the Krishna consciousness movement. By giving up sinful activity, illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and strictly following the injunctions given by the spiritual master, they will become purified of all contamination. They can therefore fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. In this age of Kali, Hari Kirtan is very, very important. The importance of chanting the holy name of the Lord is stated in the following verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. So the idea is that to give up sinful activities and engage in Hari Kirtan, that is the process for the age of Kali. Kalayar dosha nidhe rajan. Asti hyeko mahan guna. Kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangah param vraje. Kate yadhyayato vishnum tretayam yajato makaish. Dvaparicharyayam palotad hari kirtanat. The most important factor in this age of Kali, which is an ocean of faults, is that one can be free from all contamination and become eligible to enter the kingdom of God simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. The self-realization that was achieved in the Satya millennium by meditation, in the Treta millennium by the performance of different sacrifices, and in the Dwapara millennium by worship of Lord Krishna, can be achieved in the age of Kali simply by chanting the holy names Hare Krishna. Stanza 9. Okay, that was this quotation. Nāmāśraya-bhakti Krishna Chaitanya Rasavigraha Purna Shuddho Nityamukto Bhinnatvan Nāmānāmino. The holy name is the transcendently blissful giver of all spiritual benedictions, not different from Krishna. The form of all transcendental mellows, complete, pure, without material contamination, eternally liberated due to the holy name and the person who has that holy name not being different. Because the holy name and the person who has that holy name are not different. The holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it is the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there is no question of its being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. This is a quotation from the Padma Purana. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur had quoted that verse to prove that the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is fully spiritual. And then here is a follow-up verse by Śrīla Rupa Goswami. Ata Shri Krishna Namadi na bhavem grahyam indriyai sevonuhehi jihvado swayameva spuratyadaha. Because Krishna's name, form, and qualities are all on the absolute platform. His name, form, qualities, pastimes, and so on cannot be perceived by the blunt material senses. Krishna's name, form, qualities, and so on personally become manifest to one engaged in his service, beginning with his tongue. Therefore, material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes. When a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue to chant the Lord's holy name and taste the remnants of the Lord's food, the tongue is purified and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is. So this is a natural follow-up to the previous statement. The previous statement was by Vyasadeva in Padma Purana. This is a statement of Śrīla Rupa Goswami. This verse is recorded in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu. If Krishna and Krishna's holy name are actually non-different from each other, then it naturally follows that you cannot grasp that holy name just by your own endeavor, because Krishna is beyond the reach of the limited souls. We are all limited souls. Stanza 10 contains a reference to this particular portion of Bhagavatam. This verse, Sadashmasaram Hridayam Patedam Yad Grihyamanayit Hari-nāma dheyai Na Vikriyetathai Yada Vikaro Netre Jalam Gatra Bheshu Harsha. Certainly that heart is still framed when, in spite of chanting the holy name of the Lord by concentration of the mind, it does not change. The expected reactions are tears in the eyes and eruptions of ecstasy at the poles of hair. Certainly that heart is still framed, which in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration does not change, even when signs of transformation take place, such as tears in the eyes and ecstatic standing of the hairs on end. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given a significant comment on this verse. And he points out that if one exhibits ecstatic symptoms, such as tears in the eyes and ecstatic standing of the hairs on end, and his heart is still filled with lust, anger, greed, that means his heart has not become purified. Even though he has chanted Krishna's holy name with concentration, and even though he exhibits symptoms of spiritual ecstasy, his heart has not become pure. This indicates that his heart is still framed, which is a very sarcastic way of saying that he really blew it. This person simply didn't take the opportunity to make spiritual progress. This occurs at a particular juncture in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada explains the context. We should note with profit that in the first 3 chapters of the second canto, a gradual process of development of devotion service is being presented. In the first chapter, the first step in devotion service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in this universal form for the beginners is recommended. By such a gross conception of God, through the material manifestations of his energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and the senses and gradually concentrate the mind upon Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is present as a super soul in every heart and everywhere, in every atom of the material universe. The system of Pancha Upasana, recommending 5 mental attitudes for the common man, is also enacted for this purpose, namely gradual development, worship of the Supreme That may be in the form of fire, electricity, the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last the impersonal super soul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. They're all nicely described in the second chapter. But in the third chapter, further development is prescribed after one has actually reached the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service and the mature stage of Vishnu worship is suggested herein in relation to the change of heart. In other words, when one matures in worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his heart will become pure. His heart will become pure means he will lose the tendency to lord it over material nature. He will lose the propensity for lust, anger, greed, the three gateways to hell. He will want to reinstate himself in eternal service to the Supreme Lord, recognizing him to be the eternal master, eternal caretaker. The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So with the progress of devotion service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Vidhi-bhakti or regulated devotion service by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the hands, and the legs, as already explained herein before, is now stressed herein in relation to the mind, which is the impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body. It is expected by all means that by discharging a regulated devotion service, one must manifest the change of heart. So it is expected that if I engage in the activities of devotion service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, and so on, I will become pure in heart. If I do not become pure in heart, then what happens? If there is no such change, the heart must be considered steel frame, for it is not melted, even when there is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Melted heart. This indicates that we have given up our propensity for lust, anger, greed, and so on. We have accepted with all honesty our submissive position as eternal servants of Lord Krishna and his associates. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties. And if they are properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and are preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfection stage of prema, love of God. If the reaction does not take place, even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offenses only. That is the opinion of the Sandarbha, the Jiva Goswami Sandarbha. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offenses at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reaction of feelings of separation will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. The bhava stage is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, failing of the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally trance. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Śrīla Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains those symptoms and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in steady and accelerating manifestations. Śrīla Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur has very critically discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous neophytes imitating the upper symptoms for cheap appreciation. Not only Vishnu Chakravarti, but also Śrīla Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all of the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the mundane devotee, prakrita sahajiya. But the pseudo symptoms are at once detected when one sees the pseudo devotee addicted to so many forbidden things. Even though decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above mentioned ecstatic symptoms. But it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated. And for this reason, Śrīla Vishnu Chakravarti accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. Hopeless cases. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elsewhere has also noted, if we do not follow the standard rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, including the standard restrictions involved in Bhakti Yoga, there is no hope of spiritual progress. He said it very emphatically. He said, those who have not accepted these restrictions, those who don't execute devotional service properly, have been failures in the past, and they are failures in the present, and they will be failures in the future. So if we don't meticulously, carefully follow the do's and don'ts of sadhana bhakti, then we become a hopeless case for transcendental realization. Hopeless. When Lord Chaitanya met Srila Ramananda of Kovur on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms, but because of the presence of some non-devotee Brahmanas who were attendants of the Rai, the Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes they are not visible even in the body of the first-class devotee for certain circumstantial reasons. Therefore, real steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires, shanti, utilization of every moment in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, avyartha kalatvam, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly, namagane sada ruchi, attraction for living in the land of the Lord, prithistad vasati sthale, complete detachment from material happiness, virakti, and pridelessness, manashunyata. One who has developed all these transcendental qualities is really possessed of the bhava stage as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. The whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation of all material desires, etc., as mentioned above. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotion service, are invariably envious. So much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. As such, even if they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, they cannot relish the transcendental taste of the holy name. Therefore, the show of tears in the eyes, trembling, perspiration, or unconsciousness, etc., is condemned. They can, however, get in touch with the pure devotee of the Lord and rectify their bad habits. Otherwise, they shall continue to be stone-hearted and unfit for any treatment. Achikitsya. This is the word that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur uses. Achikitsya. Unfit for any treatment. A complete progressive march on the return path back home, back to Godhead. The return path home, back to Godhead will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by a realized devotee. So unless one carries out the instructions of the revealed scriptures as directed by a realized devotee, one cannot make any progress. Okay, I'll stop with that. Let me make a note. All right. Any questions? Yes, Madhavi.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Could you please elaborate bhakti in 3 modes of nature and the meaning of the word separatist, which you have used?
You can read those purports. You should examine this portion. This is in 3rd canto, chapter 29. Go through the purports. You have some good idea. Prabhupada has dealt with this. See these verses from text 8. No, from text 7 up to
3rd canto, 20th chapter.
29, 3.29. Let me just do one thing. Let me put the reference in question answer group. Okay. Anything else?
Prabhu, could you please repeat the verse number?
I put it in question
Telegram.
answer. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay. Nāmāśraya-bhakti